Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our August 28th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today's episode is dedicated to Farm Rescue, a nonprofit organization that provides on-farm assistance to farm families who have experienced a major injury, illness, or natural disaster. Farm Rescue started in North Dakota back in 2005, and today they're helping farm and ranch families in 8 different Midwestern states, including Iowa. Earlier this month, during Farm Bureau Day at the Iowa State Fair, Iowa Farm Bureau joined those efforts by announcing a $10,000 gift to Farm Rescue. Farm Rescue's Development Officer, Terry Johnston, joined us at the fair for that announcement. And that's where Spokesman reporter Bob Beyond caught up with Terry to learn more about Farm Rescue's important work.
Let's start with a little background. What is Farm Rescue, its mission and focus?
So Farm Rescue is a 501c3 nonprofit. We were started in North Dakota. Our mission is pretty simple. It's to serve family farms that are in crisis. So for whatever reason, due to injury or a health issue, a natural disaster, we come in and help the family with whether it be planting, harvesting, feeding livestock, or making hay. Those are some of the things that we're able to help the family with.
How and when did it get started?
We were founded in 2005 by Bill Gross. He's the founder and president of Farm Rescue, and he grew up on a family farm, always had a passion for serving family farms, and wasn't able to go back to the farm. So in 2005, he learned of some local farmers in his area up in North Dakota that needed some assistance, and so he borrowed some equipment and helped them out. And then in 2006, he actually rounded up a few volunteers and made some more formal agreements with the local John Deere dealer group, and that's how we got started. So since 2005, we've been serving family farms in the time of need, and we had the honor and privilege this summer of serving our 1,000th family. So we've been able to serve 1,000 families over those years, and we're very proud of that. And since starting in North Dakota, we're now in South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Illinois. So we're now covering 8 states here in the Midwest.
How has the organization grown over the years? Why do you think it's grown so quickly?
So founded on the premise of neighbor helping neighbor. When things get bad, the neighbors often will come together, and that was kind of the premise that our organization was started off of, and it's really based off of our awesome volunteer network. We've got several hundred volunteers that just graciously give of their time and talents to serve our farm families, and so that's really the success, and I think that's probably the secret to the sauce, if you will, are our awesome volunteers.
There's a limited footprint in Iowa at this point.
I think we served our first farm family in Iowa in 2012, but we would love to serve more families, and certainly that's why the relationship is so important with Iowa Farm Bureau. As a grassroots organization with tens of thousands of members in Iowa, it's a great opportunity to get the word out so that farm families are aware of our services. If they don't know we're here, we can't help them. So it's very valuable to us to have a relationship with Iowa Farm Bureau.
How is Farm Rescue funded?
We are funded completely on donations from sponsors and individual donors. We have everything from major corporate sponsors to very small businesses that support us, large donations from individuals, small donations from individuals, fundraising events. We're all funded completely with donations.
What types of events are we seeing Farm Rescue head to for assistance? Tornadoes, medical emergencies? Could you maybe run down a few?
It kind of varies. So certainly tornadoes are in the forefront because we had several this spring, especially in Iowa and Illinois. So we ended up serving a lot of families in Iowa and Illinois because of tornado damage. Their equipment was completely beyond repair. The sheds were totally destroyed. In some cases, so were their residences. And so we were able to come in and help those families. I recently just talked to a family farm over in Nebraska, and their machine shed burnt down and took all their equipment with it, their combine, their tractors, their headers, everything. And so that's another case where we're able to come in and help those folks. In the case of an injury, farming is a dangerous business and people get hurt. So broken legs, we planted some corn in northeast Iowa this past spring for a farmer that was kicked by one of his mama cows tagging a calf. something that simple, but it was in April and it was go time. And so we were able to plant for that. Another farmer over in Grundy County, Iowa, we helped this past winter, had a heart attack. And so he was unable to do too much for the first several weeks. We were able to help him as well with his livestock feeding, fed his cattle, and then able to plant some corn for him this spring.
So why do you think this became necessary? We didn't have this kind of assistance in the past. Are we seeing more disaster type events?
I don't think so. I think probably maybe the case of farm rescue being more needed now than in the past is the fact that the family farm is getting bigger. People are getting spread out. There's fewer neighbors. And that means they're probably taking care of more head of livestock or more acres, and they've got their own work to do. They've got their own crops to plant or their own cattle to feed. And so it's harder for neighbors to take the time and to be able to help each other. They certainly want to. But let's face it, we all have to stay in business. In fact, that's the whole premise of this organization is family farm succession. We want to make sure that that family farm stays in the family. And of course, losing a crop because you can't get it in or out, or having some livestock in peril because they can't be fed or whatever, can be devastating to a business. In fact, 1 year's income could completely eliminate a family farm business. And so it's just key that we're able to be there and help support them.
So what will this partnership with Farm Bureau do to help farm rescue? You touched on that a little bit. What will the dollars be utilized for?
So operating and owning and renting equipment is very expensive. We keep up-to-date equipment. John Deere is one of our major sponsors and partners, along with many of the John Deere dealer groups. And so the money will be used for expenses around that. And also we house and feed our volunteers while they're on a case helping us serve a family farm in need. So it takes a lot of money to keep those volunteers well kept while they're working out there and taking the crop out or putting the crop in or feeding the livestock. And so it's a fairly expensive proposition. I think it's somewhere around $1,000 a week per volunteer just for expenses. So as you can see, the money that Farm Bureau has given us goes a long ways to helping serve those family farms. We have a very small staff. There's only 8 of us, 6 of us full-time, so we're spread out over those 8 states doing a lot of work, and we want to make sure that the money that's given goes to help serve those families. So 98% of it does.
How many volunteers do you currently have in the network?
Well, that's a hard number to put my finger on because it's a big database. I would say active volunteers, several hundred, more than 500, probably less than 1,000. We have volunteers from, I think, 48 or 49 of the states. They come from all over the country, from all walks of life. Some are retired ag professionals, retired farmers, John Deere employees, both current and retired, pastors, you name it. We can use volunteers from any walk of life, whether they want to help us, for example, like today at Farm Bureau Park, we have 2 volunteers here that have graciously given their day to help spread the word to fairgoers about farm rescue. And so everything from that to driving a tractor to a combine or whatever their skill set and desires are, we love people's help.
So you touched on this a little bit as well, but who would be somebody that may benefit as a volunteer for the organization? And if somebody wanted to volunteer, who should they reach out to?
I've met several of the volunteers. I'm fairly new to Farm Rescue. I joined the team in March. And these are some of the most giving, compassionate people you will come across. And not only do they serve in the capacity of actually physically getting the work done on the farm, but when we come to a farm, usually it's for a very bad situation. And so having the ability to serve those families, be there for them, help support them, when they don't have to worry about the work getting done and they can focus on recovery and healing. And this is what I'm telling you about our volunteers and why I think we're so successful, is they are the ones that do the work and they are the ones that lift these people up, walk alongside them during this tough time. And it's fantastic.
So if they'd like to be a volunteer, who would they reach out to?
They can go to our website, farmrescue.org. That's a great place to go. It's a simple process to go through to apply to be a volunteer. And of course, to learn more about Farm Rescue, we've got videos, we've got testimonials from our volunteers, from the families that we've served over the years. We've got the ability there to donate as well if you wish to do that, or refer a family. I would say probably 60 or 70% of our cases come from referrals. Farm folks are proud and they don't like to ask for help necessarily, and so we get most of our cases from referrals, so they can do all those things on our website.
Thanks, Terry. You just heard Terry praise Farm Rescue's volunteer network, the literal boots on the ground that are helping farm families persevere through crises. Ron Donohue of Blakesburg, Iowa, is part of that essential network. He's been volunteering with Farm Rescue for 5 years, and he was also on hand at the state fair to share his firsthand experiences. Once again, here's spokesman reporter Bob Beyond with Farm Rescue volunteer Ron Donohue.
Ron, welcome. How about a little bit about your background?
My background, I grew up on a farm. I've been in the agricultural industry my whole life. I volunteered for Farm Rescue while I was working. I'd take some vacation and help in the planting season. And now I'm retired, and so now I can even spend more time volunteering for Farm Rescue.
How did you become involved with Farm Rescue?
A good friend of mine had volunteered for Farm Rescue and knew that I enjoyed helping other families and helping wherever people are needing assistance. And he told me about Farm Rescue, and he knew I loved agriculture, working on the farm, running equipment and things like that. So he told me about Farm Rescue and invited me to be with his team that was going to a planting season in the Dakotas.
So where do you live, and how do you get called to an event? How does the process work?
I live in southeast Iowa, but the first 3 or 4 years we actually helped farm families in North Dakota. The friend of mine also lived in southeast Iowa, and we traveled together. We drove up to North Dakota and spent a week planting up in that area.
So how do you get called to an event?
Get notified by email or telephone. The coordinators tell us approximate times. Farming, of course, you got the weather events, so you don't know when you're going to be planting exactly. So you keep a calendar open for a time frame, and then they notify you when they need the help. And so then we travel up to that area and prepare the equipment and be prepared to go to the farm when the ground conditions allow.
So why did you decide this was an organization you wanted to be involved with?
Multiple reasons. One thing, I grew up on a farm, and I know what it's like helping out neighbors. When someone has an injury or an accident or a tornado comes through, they need help quickly. And so I enjoy helping others, helping getting in. It's very rewarding to me to be a part of a family for a week and helping them, and you actually become part of their family. You're working side by side with them, and you get to know them very well. And then even after you're done planting in the spring, you stay in touch because you can make real good bonds with that family.
Tell me about one of the farms you assisted at that had the most impact on you.
A case in Iowa, a farmer was injured by a cow, and I raise cattle myself, a small herd. So I got to know him very well because I could talk his language as far as raising cattle and the crops. My history where I worked for a living was in the seed industry. So I was able to visit with him closely with his agronomics for his fields and how he wanted his fields planted. We started a new planter and got it all set up for him, and we really did an excellent job. We planted corn and soybeans for him and came back in the summer to visit with him when the crop was coming up to see how we did, where we could improve, and it was very rewarding being with him and his family.
How about other places you've been? What types of calls do you get?
I was in North Dakota. Again, being an Iowa boy, I never was with 60-foot grain seeders before. Went to North Dakota, and we were in some fields that were over a mile long, and we were covering 60 feet at a time and covering a lot of acres. And it was a different environment for me. The environment up in North Dakota is so much different than southeast Iowa that it was very interesting to me to see their agricultural practices. It was a fun trip up there. The families were super, and it's always good to hear when later in the year, the healing process, the farmer is happy that you could come back and maybe see the crop growing.
What kind of things have you done to assist a farmer in need? Planting, cleaning, transporting livestock?
Personally, I've been mainly working in the planting season, and so when there was the tornado in southeast Iowa, Farm Rescue came in and actually helped clean the fields so that we could get in with the planter. so much debris that was blown by that tornado that when we were actually planting, I remember looking down in the cab and I saw a baseball glove out in the middle of the field. And you just realize how disaster hit that family and just blew everything everywhere.
So why do you do this? Why is this important to you?
I really feel that I'm able to give back to the ag community, give back to the farms, help people that are truly needing your help. If they don't get a crop planted, that's their income for the year. And so I feel that I'm really helping a family in the farming that I love.
What would you say to someone considering being a part of the farm rescue team?
Do it. I would say contact Farm Rescue and volunteer. They have very good training. You don't have to be from a farm background. You don't have to be growing up on a tractor or anything like that. They have very good training films, so when you go out to a case where you're volunteering, you're not going in unprepared. And when you're there, you're with a team of people that will be with you. They're not going to let you get in trouble. You're going to be able to do the job well. And they got the best technology, the best equipment that's out in the industry. So it's enjoyable. Just do it.
Whether you're looking to donate, volunteer, or refer a family in need, we hope you join us in supporting Farm Rescue's cause. Earlier in the episode, you heard Terry Johnston refer to their website, farmrescue.org, which is the easiest place to get started. We have a link to that website down in the notes for this podcast episode, along with Terry's email address. That's all for this episode of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for the next episode on September 11th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.